you set the stage for it. Viper versus Thijs. For Viper, a must-win situation. He now sits in a spot where if he does not win, it would mean that Swids would also have to lose. I have not studied the tiebreaker spot in that one, but I believe that you have.
I have, yes. But we will deal with that when we get to it.
Yes.
I think the simple equation right now is that a Viper loss means that Orange survives. I also have a whole page of notes here which is completely irrelevant about what happens to playoffs when RDU won that previous game, because if RDU had won that previous game, Thijs was then suddenly in all these head-to-head tiebreaker battles as well. Now, with that result, Thijs is on easy street. He is coasting, he is in the playoffs, he is just trying to do his duty in terms of, upkeeping tournament integrity to just play out as hard as he can for the prize money. Which, of course, I think Thijs, the professional that he is going to have no issue in doing, because he wants to win every game, every match, every turn of Hearthstone he has ever played. He wants to do the very best that he can.
Yeah, I was trying to think of how to phrase this. Like, Thijs loves competing.
Yep.
Like, I don't think... It seems like there's almost nobody that streams as much as Thijs does, and despite that, he still loves competing. His livelihood is that stream, but any opportunity he gets, he's like, tournament, yes, give me. He wants to play competitive matches. He wants to be challenged, and that's what he's seeking here in Grandmasters.
Yep. I mean, Kalento A and Kalento B are both very similar in this regard, where they both have this incredible stream schedule where they put in a ton of hours, they pull in great viewership. They could quite happily just coast through on that stream, just make a nice living off it and just be happy. But they both have the competitive drive where even if it's a couple of months off here and there, maybe if it's half a season off here and there, he knows, does Thijs and does Kalento, that they can dip back into the competitive scene whenever and put up results. And both of them have been able to do that consistently on multiple occasions.
Thijs faced with Turn 1 Northshire Cleric as we head to this Priest Mirror match, an extremely volatile one where your decisions are magnified. He has Inner Fire, but he's staring down the Turn 1 Cleric on Viper's side, which threatens Inner Fire. Take the risk, pay the price.
Viper, just with the dream opening 1-drop into 1-drop Inner Fire, is the absolute dream in the matchup. And you can see Viper just takes a moment. All right, I have the good thing. I've been given the hand. Let's just not throw this away. That is, count them, 2 closed eyes, deep breaths before he did anything that turn.
So for Thijs now, the reason I think he took this risk is because he has the response. It was Wild Pyro, Coin, Inner Fire. Now I believe it is Wild Pyro, Coin, Power Word Shield.
And that is significantly better. And Viper is now staring at a hand that is buff, no minion.
Bad news.
Minion. But it's the bad one. Viper plays a Stormwind Knight in his deck for the ability to come back from situations where he's been forced off board.
This is the first time he's drawn this.
It is,
like the entire season.
Yes.
I must consider.
Oh boy.
He has had this in Priest so many weeks. And the first time he draws it is on turn 3 after his board gets cleared?
Yeah. In a Priest Mirror where he went 1-drop Inner Fire, which is supposed to end the game. So I've been told.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Sottle, but I run 2 Wild Pyromancers in my Priest deck.
I also run 2 Wild Pyromancers in my Priest deck.
Viper runs 2 in his Priest deck.
He also runs 0 Eternium Rovers, though. You want to talk about that one?
Nope. I wanted to keep talking about how Thijs runs 2 Wild Pyromancers in his Priest deck. And to please stop cutting Wild Pyromancer from your Priest deck. It is a vital tool.
I agree. Still, expensive minion that can't be played with the buffs. That means it's just a very, very slow turn.
What do you throw away?
Stormwind Knight seems like more of a win condition here than the Injured Blade Master does, the way this game is going.
You got to throw something away, though.
Injured Blade Master, if you throw it out here and it dies, you have Psycho Pomp draws for the following turn.
Sounds good.
If you can find anything that just keeps you relatively competitive, just keeps you alive for 4 or 5 more turns, then you have Chains of Draws that allow you to OTK your opponent with that Stormwind Knight.
So the difference is going to be if you Stormwind Knight, you have Circle of Healing on the following turn to get a big Injured Blade Master down.
I don't think that's important, honestly. I'm sorry to like shut you down, but I just don't think a 4/7 is going to win. I think if you drew...
Well, you have a Divine Spirit as well.
Yeah, I think if you drew Circle of Healing here, like you might even just be more interested in drawing cards with holding onto it to draw cards with a Northshire Cleric.
Just eventually.
Yeah, it's a real struggle of a matchup here, and I think the Psycho Pomp top deck is more important. I think the Stormwind Knight is more likely to win Viper the game from behind here.
Can Thijs ignore this?
That's an interesting question. Can Thijs ignore this?
You're slowly turning into me where you will ignore lines, but you will never ignore damage anymore. I think with the Northshire Cleric, the answer is no. Right, choke the board.
Right. Oh no, I've made my stance very clear on this. Don't kill a Blade Master to play around Psycho Pomp plan. I just don't believe in it.
It's ridiculous. I think there are very narrow times you can identify, yes, I can't do that.
Right.
Very specific context.
Yep, specific hand reads, you know, specific actions that your opponent has missed that just influences them almost certainly having a Psycho Pomp in their hand. But their entire deck relies on having a minion in play, and in this context, in this game, with Thijs not seeing Viper's hand, he can almost certainly identify that those 2 cards on the far left are either expensive minions. Actually, all 3 of those cards on the far left are either expensive minions or they are buff spells that have not been able to be played. If they're buff spells, you do not want to leave a 4/3 on the board because that activates Viper's potentially whole hand in that situation.
So let's do some deducive logic here then.
Go on.
It cannot be Psycho Pomp. The left ones, anyway. He would have played it, right?
Would he? You wouldn't have put a Blade Master in it first before you played it?
That's a good point.
Yeah. Yikes.
Could have been that one, obviously.
Yeah.
I was going to end up landing on like Topsy-Turvy, Bwansamdi, Circle of Healing, but I think he clearly would have circled on turn 2.
What was turn 2? Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Took me a second to rewind my mind.
Yeah, you can deduce it pretty accurately, I think, to like Divine Spirit, Bwansamdi, and then some other fringe cards.
That circle is game if you were even at all worried about where this turn was going for Thijs.
Oh my. Bump, Injured Circle.
You absolutely do not attack with this injured... Whoa!
No, this is right.
Yeah, it's fine.
What are you about?
It's fine. He's about to have a 8 health Tolvir, and he has Inner Fire Power Shield in his head, so I was just thinking about whether you ever go fishing for lethal immediately there instead.
This is lethal.
Exactly, yeah. We made this point earlier. Sometimes you don't have to blow up your opponent to get lethal.
I see a dark future.
All right, so now the lethal presentation becomes a thought, except you have silence in your hand. You just drew that, though, so let's figure that out.
He's dead. I figured it out. Right, this is a 2/8, I believe.
Yep.
Yes, it is.
24.
So heal it up to 8. Power shield it up to 10.
What is a loon's will?
GG.
There's plenty of alternate routes.
Yeah. This way annoys me because you're doing it on a minion that had more attack to begin with.
Just pick one.
It annoys me. It's fine. Lethal is lethal is lethal is lethal.
Thijs takes game 1.
Good news for Orange fans, bad news for Viper fans, horrible news for Viper. These have now become must-win games for both of the players involved in the relegation scrap, both Viper and Swids. Today and tomorrow, respectively, will now have to win their games. Orange's win did not secure him the position, but it completely flipped the psychology on the other 2 players. where them having the 100% upside, like the win and safe scenario, has actually just completely flipped them to the point when they now must win, and they know that they're going to be in some sort of bare minimum tiebreaker scrap for relegation if they lose.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough spot to be in, and I got a feel for people who are in these tough spots, but I have to celebrate winners at the same time. For Thijs, this match for him is about pride at this point. He's secured playoffs. He's playing strictly for the competitive integrity of it.
A little bit of prize money, but for the most part, yeah. I think with those big streaming dollars rolling in for Thijs, he's not too worried about one individual win bonus. This is a competitive drive issue for Thijs, where he will try his best to win every game of Hearthstone that is in front of him, whether it's a tournament, whether it's a ladder, whether he's playing some meme deck on stream. No matter what he's doing, he wants to win.
And this is just a brutal loss for Viper. You start off with Cleric into Light Warden Interfire against a Cleric, and you got blown up.
You don't lose those. That hand doesn't lose.
You do when there's 2 Wild Pyros.
Yeah, Wild Pyromancer is a big card. Viper has that Stormwind Knight to fall back on in positions where he can, win from behind in certain games, but Pyromancer does the job a lot earlier.
Yeah, just too early that it showed up for Thijs in that one. We got to go to a quick break. When we come back, we're jumping into game number 2 of this set, where Thijs currently leads 1-0. Viper needs to win back-to-back. Stay tuned.
Well met, friend. Ooh.
Let's get this over with.
I win!
Oh, what an amazing game! Well played!
Here's to the winner.
We've created a new home for all things Hearthstone Esports for both desktop and mobile users. From the homepage, you can find the latest articles, scores, and VODs. And from the navigation bar, you can find so much more. Here's how it works. Under the Grandmasters tab, you can view competitor profiles. Here you can see a player's top classes, recent decks, and watch their most recent series. You can also access the standings from this tab to help you understand where each player is in terms of playoff contention or relegation. On the schedule page, you can check the dates and times for every part of the Hearthstone Masters program. This includes the full calendar of Masters qualifiers, Masters Tour event pages, and the weekly schedule for Hearthstone Grandmasters. Looking to try your hand at the decks the pros are using? Simply click the eye on a Grandmasters match to see submitted deck lists. From here, hit the purple Copy Deck Code button and open Hearthstone to your collection. Then, create a new deck and simply answer the Create from Clipboard prompt in the affirmative. Finally, the News tab will show you Hearthstone Esports news exclusively. Dive into interviews with your favorite players and check back every so often to see what you've missed. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the tavern.
Welcome back to Hearthstone Grandmasters for Europe, the penultimate day of the regular season. We are amidst match 3 right now, where Thijs is up a game over Viper in this one. I'm Nathan, that's Admirable's More. I'm joined by Simon Sottle Welch. And Sottle, I know for those watching, they know the stakes already, but go ahead and set it up again for those who weren't.
So Orange won in our previous series in a very emotional encounter, which changed two things about this matchup. Firstly, it took all the pressure off Thijs because it locked up his playoff position for him. So he is now playing just for the spirit of competition and for a little bit of extra prize money and just for final standings within that playoff positioning. For Viper, this is everything because that Orange win means that he is now facing down relegation. He must win to keep pace with Orange and put the pressure back on Orange in terms of tiebreakers and heap the pressure onto Swids for his crucial match tomorrow against Hunter Ace.
Yep, and right now we have a Priest versus Shaman matchup that's taking place. Viper's going to be on Priest for this one. And so if Thijs can duplicate what Boston did in match number 1, that is the bad news for Viper. For Viper, it is about winning the next 2 games. Nothing else matters.
And it's the luxury, if you want to put it that way, and you probably shouldn't, of losing the Priest mirror, that you still have Priest in your lineup to move forward from there. You are likely to find a good matchup with your Priest at some point in the series, so a loss in the mirror is not the end of the world, but it is, of course, still a huge advantage to the player that wins it.
It's been such a storied career for Viper in the last year, where he dominated the tournaments that he attended, made 2 championship appearances alongside Bunny Hopper,
Is someone injured?
got it to the finals of the World Championship, and delivered one of the most exciting Game 5s that I believe I will ever see.
Certainly the most exciting game of Hearthstone I have ever cast, and I believe one of the most entertaining that's ever happened.
So for Thijs here, it's the sequencing issue. You want the Questing Explorer down to try to chip away, but you want the Evil Totem down to fill up your mana next turn.
I think you Evil Totem first.
I pretty much always do. In the event that it lives, you set up your Wasp too.
In the event that it lives, it sets up your Wasp. In the event that you roll Rush Lackey, you then get to immediately do 3 damage with your Questing Explorer on the following turn, which is very important, because Questing Explorer coming down as a 2/3 just doesn't do anything, and it doesn't do anything for 2 turns. If you go Questing Explorer and then you go Evil Totem, that Evil Totem rolls a Rush Lackey, well, big deal. Your opponent's like played 2 turns of development in between that anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas this way, it comes down as a 3-attack minion a turn quicker if you get that Rush Lackey.
There are some times that the questing can matter. I'm thinking specifically with Sandstorm Elemental in hand.
Yep. It also, like, it threatens a Light Warden coming out from Viper this turn as well. Like, there are definitely ways where it's relevant.
So that extra arms draw, crucial, I think, for Viper here. He gets to check this totem right away, and a lot of worries just melted away.
Yep. That's a big old pickup for Thijs, though. Had nothing to do with this Witchy Lackey this turn otherwise.
Gonna be curious about the mutate. I think staring down a big Northshire Cleric, you have 2 options, which is number 1, move in and try to contest the Cleric. You know that extra arms is there. Number 2 is save the mutate and go, you know what, I really need this to hit a Mogushon Ward.
You always roll the Mukla here. Oh, never mind. Unlucky.
That's still pretty good.
It is. Full health. Pretty big deal.
Just thinking about the 4-drop.
He has a, what, 2/4 right now? An average 4-drop is a 3/4 on average. So he, on average, gains 1 attack. Yeah, that's a pretty middling result. I would have considered 1-drop into 2-drop there to try and compete with the 3/5 as a combined entity.
Yeah, I know it sounds kind of ridiculous to say, but when you have a 2/4 out that's stopping a Northshire Cleric where more arms is the way they push through,
Yeah.
You're thinking Wild Pyromancer as well. That 2/4 means a lot. And so I'm looking at the 1/1 going to 2, and there are some 2s that are absolutely brutal to fight off this spot. You're thinking 2/6, you're thinking 4/4, you're thinking 4/3. They're rare, but when they happen, they are powerful.
Yeah. It's a really tough call, but 2/4 into a 4-drop is a very, very small increment on average. You're just going to gain +1 attack on average, so whether that is worth a card or not from your hand is debatable.
Viper's hand is getting spicy.
It is. Thijs needs board control right now, or he is going to be in serious trouble.
So I don't think he can snag it right now. I do think that he has options for the following turn. I'm thinking double questing this turn
I must ponder.
into Ethereal Lackey, see what you get.
What if you just need the Earth Shock right now?
I think the Earthshock right now is not going to get the job done.
Okay.
I think too many minions are going to live, and you're going to find yourself in the same spot.
Fair enough.
Of course it's the right way.
I like Dig for Mogu. Makes sense to me. Get this quest active, get this Wasp doubled up, get this Ethereal Lackey doubled up, try and make Earthquake relevant going into the later turns of the game.
Yep. I don't know if he's going to be afforded that much time. So for Viper here, it's now a risk versus reward scenario. He knows there's no immediate card in Thijs' deck that checks big stuff. And so I think that Giant Northshire Cleric is very much on the table this turn.
Especially since he has nothing in his Psychopomps currently, right? They are just 4-mana 3/1s.
That's right. So the question would be more arms and set up on the following. More arms and Innerfire and preserve the Divine Spirit, or Divine Spirit and Innerfire. Perhaps you're interested in some trades. Draw some more cards.
What if it's a Pyro turn?
Well, that's also a way to draw more cards.
Can just Pyro, Divine Spirit, leave just a 2/3 on the board after the trades, and then rip the circle to draw?
You could just Pyro, Divine Spirit, draw 4. 5.
Seems unnecessary.
You still get to train the 2/2 afterwards.
That's fair.
He says, give me the bigger minions.
Thijs is 4 out of 6 right now.
Man, Viper's turn was tough. There's so many risk versus reward factors that go into everything.
Agreed. The play I like least there is the all-in smash you in the face big cleric line, because I think he's in a secure enough position where he doesn't need to take that risk. He doesn't want to just, you know, concede a lot of percentage to a random Earthshock coming out from Thijs, with the Lackey still being in hand. He knows that there is... I don't think it's ever possible, right? No, it just isn't. Even with the Lackey still on board, for Thijs to complete quest and get a doubled up weaponized Wasp, so a 3/7 is just kind of safe this turn anyway.
You belong to the bar now. Bubble. Swiftly. Chances.
Yep, Thijs is on that Wasp and double search with the Lackey line.
Yep.
Trying to find Earthquake, going into 7. Trying to find spells that can disrupt immediately.
Plague of Murlocs, Earthshock, Hex, Earthquake, Rain of Toads is an emergency that sometimes can dig you out of trouble.
Just about in that order, too.
Yep.
I wonder.
So for Viper, Lackey, Wasp, very much on the mind. Is this a turn where you feel like you need to make something happen?
This is a turn where I want a Divine Spirit on my Northshire Cleric.
Do you want Innerfire there as well?
That's a much more difficult question.
I do for 2 reasons. Number 1, I have Psychopomp and Injured Tol'vir. I'm going to play the Injured Tol'vir this turn. Ah, that is smart. Oh, that is really smart. Sets up the lethal. Clears off the board. And Thijs has got so many angles to check. Like, even if he's able to check the Northshire Cleric, what that means is that Viper's got enough damage on board that he gets to keep pushing a bit.
From nothing.
Weaponized Wasp and Sandstorm Elemental Life Drinker on that term instead of going fishing. Can we talk about that for a split second? Okay, that was bad. All right, good.
Yeah.
Good talk.
I was like, well, you just kind of die still, so.
You do very much kind of die.
I must ponder.
I believe Thijs is dead with these discoveries as well.
Cleric has 13 right now, so 4 plus double lightning bolt still leaves it with 3 health.
Victory
Game 3.
this time.
Viper recognizing the inflection points of the game. Let the Cleric stay at 7. Oh, it's vulnerable now. Make it big.
Yep, perfect timing. It was the turn before that one was the most difficult one, right? Where he had options for like Pyro, Divine Spirit, draw cards, like I was talking about. He had the line that he took. He had options of just going all in and just pushing damage on that turn. I think the all in line, like I said at the time, was the one that I liked the least, because it just wasn't necessary in that position. It was a risk that he didn't need to take. He was very secure in the position in the matchup that he was in. So don't roll the dice against a Plague of Murlocs or Earthshock or whatever else it is that comes out from the opponent, if that gives you some percentage to lose the game. I think from that position, he then recognized the spot and say, okay, it's a 3-7. This 3-7's actually vulnerable now because of the threat of Weaponized Wasp, and I know my opponent has a Lackey in hand, so I can actually get punished this turn. This is my turn to pull the trigger, and he actually got to play other big minions alongside that as well to be able to back up the lethal, even if it was Hex or Earthshock that came out.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how the timing of that is going to change from matchup to matchup, where like against a warrior deck, you might look at that and be like, nah, let's just go ahead and deal this 14 damage.
Sooner,
like,
better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Against Druid, sooner, better.
Yep.
Against Shaman, well, if I do it this turn and they discover something, I might lose the game because I didn't do enough.
Because against other matchups, it's a very, very simple equation. The card that beats you is in their deck. So the longer you wait, the longer they have to draw that card that beats you.
Yeah.
Against Shaman, there's a very clear signal, a very clear inflection point where they play and hold on to a Lackey. So they either have a Lackey in their hand that could be an Ethereal Lackey, or they've already played an Ethereal Lackey and they have spells in their hand that could punish you. And in that case, the equation is kind of almost flipped, because you know that they have the potential to have the thing that beats you in hand, so you just need to find the point where it punishes you the least when that happens.
Just super cool.
Yep.
And so now, with everything on the line, Viper, Highlander Hunter. This has been one of the sleepers, I would say, in Grandmasters, where it's been brought seldom but won often.
Absolutely. One of the highest win rate decks in our format. One of the decks that is much more dominant on ladder even than it has been in Grandmasters. Even though the Grandmasters win rate does kind of reflect the ladder statistics, we don't have the sample size to really be able to say that this is like a tier 1 deck in Grandmasters, because we just haven't seen it often enough. Weirdly, like, I was planning to come into this week, having looked at the statistics, and commend people like Kalento for having brought Highlander Hunter multiple times, because the stats seem to back him up. Kalento just didn't bring it this week with all those plans coming in. But Viper, with relegation on the line, has chosen to bank on this Highlander Hunter. And that Zephyrus in the opening hand is very much the card you are looking for.
Yep. And Viper is a keep subject 9 gamer, as you gain experience with this deck, you very often do. It thins your deck of lots of utility and starts giving you some meaty draws in the middle stages of that game.
I tell you one card that I do very much want to mulligan for against Shaman, though, and that is Desert Spear.
Oh, baby.
Boom.
Sottle, no Quest Shaman has ever defeated a turn 3 Desert Spear.
Never happened. Literally never will.
I am very interested in Scavenging Hyena.
Sign me up.
Options for Animal Companion if Thijs doesn't check it. Viper has a dream hand for the matchup.
Moves quickly.
The worst thing that happens to you is a 2-3 if you play Scavenging Hyena, if Questing Explorer comes down, and then you have like Zephyrus Lightning Bolt, you have Animal Companion for Misha. Like, you just have that checked in a lot of ways as well.
You can also just Desert Spirit, run the 1/1 in.
Sure.
Thing gets out of range. Open to Sandstorm Elemental or Lackey Discovery on the back end.
Yeah.
The point is, all of your options are good.
Yes.
Unleash the Hounds is his weakest option, and it still would get the Hyena out of range. Deep breath. Focus. I really enjoy the Lightning Bolt option here because it sets us up for 3 mana on an overloaded 4 mana turn.
It is, like, any time you use Zephyrus in the early game, you have to ask yourself the question, did I need to do this? Because the things that Zephyrus can do in the late game are just so much inherently more powerful because then you get to play late game cards instead of early game cards, which do massively powerful things. But the counter argument to that is how much more important is turn 1 to 3 than turn 8 through 10 in a lot of matchups.
I guess that's a dynamic question, right? Because it's going to change depending on the context. So like if that's the strength of this Hunter deck, I think, is that it can play both sides of that. I think that's the strength of Shaman, is that while its early game can be quite weak, it can also be quite stable, and the late game of Shaman is very powerful. And I like Viper's choice here to start pushing the damage. He says the early game is where Shaman's at its weakest. Take risks against that. If I see payoffs, I can end the game before Thijs reaches the important stages of the game for himself.
Thijs needs Rush Lackey or Shoot Lackey right now, or he is going to take 1,000,000 damage from this thing.
Rush Lackey.
Oh. All right, we have a game.
We do. But Thijs is
You
bored.
can see it. Sorry, but you could see it from Viper's reaction. He knew how important that was. You do not need my words to make that point. Viper's reaction says everything. Look at how good his position is. He has a free board with this Desert Spear to develop, and still he understands how crucial that Scavenging Hyena going down was.
It definitely offsets the advantage that he had, but he still has opportunities to seize that. We're looking at Animal Companion, clear board. Subject 9, likely a clear board afterwards. Like, his hand is still so good, but this is what the game means. Anytime any advantage is snagged away from him, he's going to feel it.
Boy, Desert Spear sucks when you're a Shaman. How do you develop into that thing as Quest Shaman?
To my side.
You just don't.
Quickly.
You talk about keeping the damage going. This little piggy went to market.
That little piggy's going to stay home for quite some time.
Yeah, I'm thinking that Thijs needs a Sludge Slurper here real bad. Do you ever just Life Drinker for curve considerations? Oh boy.
Perplexing.
Of course it's the right way.
Not too keen on floating the mana here, so coin it is.
Yep. Agreed.
Job done.
Yeah, nice 3-3 into play. Desert Spear doesn't just immediately interact with. Viper really wants to subject 9 here, in which case your Bug Slosher ends up quite competitive anyway. Crucially, Viper did not draw a card this turn. It's kind of bad for him.
I wonder.
I am not seeing a Zephyrus pan out that is even close to as good as the Subject 9 is right now. He is considering the mass contender with Snake Trap, it seems.
Yep.
I think that leaves you vulnerable to Mogu Flesh Shaper and to Sandstorm Elemental. I'm much more interested in thinning my deck. Find the big cards to end the game.
It's interesting, though, like, what the secrets mean to Thijs's turn. Like, with Thijs not knowing what is what. Like, it's very easy to, from even... We've talked about this from the opposite side. Like, in Orange's series, for example, where we deliberately didn't check the secret just to try and get the point across. But from Viper's side as well, like, you can get into this trap where you say, well, I know this is Snake Trap, so my opponent is just going to proc the Snake Trap, play a Mogu Flesh Shaper, and then blow up my board with a Sandstorm Elemental. But what if Thijs doesn't do that because he's scared of other secrets being in play?
Well,
Of course it's the right way.
I am worried for Viper. I think Thijs is about to do the obvious thing. And that could spell big trouble.
But again, what are you calling the obvious thing right now?
We'll attack the Huffer.
Okay.
So now, Snake Trap.
But if that wasn't Snake Trap, he just cleared 2 minions off the board and he couldn't play his Mogu this turn anymore.
Yeah, I think you're interested in the mind control tech when it's Snake Trap.
But what if it wasn't Snake Trap? Do you at least see what I'm saying here, where it's not as obvious as like you necessarily like saying it is Snake Trap?
But it's a 1 in 6.
Yeah, agreed.
After you see the snipe, it's a 1 in 5.
Agreed.
I think the obvious thing to do is to trade the Huffer.
Okay.
Because if the Huffer lives, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's do the obvious thing.
Okay.
I wonder.
And another secret drawn. And that one's about as dead in the matchup as you can imagine.
Right.
I think for Viper, the Unleash the Hounds being in hand is what prompted that prior turn. Where it feels like he's just hunting a lethal down.
Makes some sense. Soul of the Forest. He doesn't get Soul of the Forest. Sea Giant Houndmaster. Interesting. Betrayal over Soul of the Forest there. Yeah, okay. Sure. I can see it.
Oh, boy.
I believe he's
I am nervous. Viper cuts the board down from second mind control tech. And he is not happy about it.
That is 1 damage off a full clear. No, even mana wouldn't work out, because even if you play the Sandstorm first, you're killing 2 minions, so the Mogu doesn't come down alongside Hero Power.
I must ponder.
Short version, he's not killing the Sea Giant this turn.
Viper sees something silly he did. And I'm guessing it's perhaps Unleash the Hounds?
Oh, with the Sea Giant? Yeah,
Yeah.
very possibly. How much did he pay for the Sea Giant?
3 mana.
3, yeah. Unleash cost 3, would have summoned 3 minions, and he would have had... No, because he would have had a full board of 7 on that point, right?
Well,
and then if he trades into 1 to make space for the Sea Giant, his Sea Giant costs 1 again, because there would be 9 minions in play.
That's what I'm... What? Is it... Was it like Desert Spear stuff?
I don't know. It's not the first time that Viper would have chastised himself for a mistake that we didn't spot.
It happens every series, it feels like.
Yeah.
I wonder.
Something like ultra insignificant that in Viper said, he's like, but yes, 1 out of 1,000 times this bad thing happens.
I'm curious about this turn from Thijs, though. I was wondering whether he plays more stats this turn and like tanks the hit from the Sea Giant, uses the stats to compete against the Sea Giant, and then heals up with the Life Drinker afterwards.
Just thinking the timing is at 16 facing turn 7. Viper's been pushing damage pretty aggressively. I think Dino Tamer Brain is on your mind.
Are you beating that card ever?
Maybe Thijs thinks so.
I think I disagree.
Rat Trap 8, yeah.
Because what's the plan now? Your opponent just went play a thing, hit you in the face for 8, which I think is the absolute bare minimum they can do in any scenario. What's the plan?
I don't think there was one. I think it was
Perplexing.
kind of dying, so I need extra life. I don't know what this could give.
That's hot.
Ready to make some money.
All right. Nice 3-3. We like those.
I mean, you're facing down dying.
Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt will kill the Sea Giant. But I believe...
Frost Shock will freeze it.
Ooh.
Swiftly.
Problem is, this is now the Rat Trap going off.
But that's the Lightning Bolt.
That's the Lightning Bolt and the Frost Shock, yeah.
Mortals are so squishy.
And now Thijs has built himself a Stormbringer board. potentially for the following turn.
Viper has 12 loaded. Sorry, 11.
Yeah,
Board space. 11 with explosive trap does not lock Thijs from attacking. And there's a Stormbringer.
I'll tell you one thing, if Thijs' plan was draw Sludge Slurper, it's looking like a pretty genius plan in this position.
Honestly, it might have just, after seeing that turn, it might have been. I mean, like, what's the card that changes the most? 2 lackeys for cheap mana. And overloaded for 2, he's got a perfect 6. If Viper does not check the board, there are outcomes in which he dies.
There's also outcomes where there are a lot of Shivalas on his opponent's side of the board.
I mean, there is a lot of bad stuff that can happen, and he's running out of time.
He is.
He's calculating every single thing right now.
Like, if you unleash the Hounds and just clear a bunch of stuff, you still just have 12 damage on board, right? Like, I feel like this is a defensive Unleash the Hounds from Viper's perspective. Viper disagrees. Explosive Trap and Pressure Plate? Oh, just Explosive Trap, sorry. Thought I was playing the Pressure Plate initially.
If you attack for 6 first, you lose 2 legendaries.
So he has seen a Rat Trap, a Snake Trap, and now the... Oh, and the Snipe from the Masked Contender, and now this Secret get played. So any attack, even if he makes a value trade attack first, is threatening Freezing Trap.
I think you got to attack first, though.
Engaging TC-130 until dislocated.
He was trying to steal the Sea Giant.
I thought that was better out than the Stormbringer.
If he stole the Sea Giant, he cleared off the position.
And then he dies to Hero Powers?
I think the idea is draw a Life Drinker.
Okay. My head tells me roll Chivala's there, but I think it's very, very marginal either way.
Clears out the position with just a Hound, actually.
Okay.
Stormbringer. Oh my gosh, this is so tense.
But now if Viper Hero Power, I guess he's... Yeah, Viper still has to be scared of Shudderwock and the second Life Drinker. I was going to say...
No. Overload for 1.
Okay. So he just has to be scared of the second Life Drinker. Because I was going to say Viper can Hero Power.
Lackey for Witch's Brew.
Pass. And then Stormbringer into Legendaries, like, doesn't work, I don't think. Like, it's Shivala that's the big payoff, right, for doing that. But, like, that is the most caster vision call of all time. Like, to be able to be in that position and to make that call.
That's like the vision that Viper has to develop right now, though, because everything that beats him is Life Drinker and random outcome.
Yeah. So now Freezing Trap and Explosive in play. Thijs looks confused as to why the turn hasn't ended. He can probably work it out. There is a Lynx in hand.
I think Thijs is perplexed trying to figure out how he wins. If you Hero Power the Sludge Slurper, you don't get to Stormbringer.
I think he just mouthed the word Shivala to himself.
I must ponder.
But in order to get a Shivala to go off, he has to attack something first to deal with the Freezing Trap.
If you're going to go for Shivala, the play here is lead with Sludge Slurper, see the Lackey.
Sure.
Now, the Lackey can determine whether or not you change your plan. It will not. So now, you find the attack.
You play that, you freeze something, because the Freezing Trap has to be activated so that your Shivala can attack after the Stormbringer.
And you got to find heal. He's moved away from Evil Cable Rat. And Shivala is the out for Thijs.
Swiftly.
Doesn't find it. And Viper is going to win his must-win match.
Whoa.
Victory is formidable.
He
Thijs,
now has put the onus onto Swids.
you have a point. His thirst for victory is formidable. There was Shivala at the end there was Ziliax at the end. Maybe there's one or two we're forgetting about. I wonder, because Thijs ended up in the position where he needed to roll for Shivala anyway, but like with less minions in play to find it. The difference is that he got to do so with like kind of a clear board, but Viper got to redevelop into that turn anyway. I think that whole late game scenario was super marginal. And the reason it was super marginal is because Viper played a Desert Spear in the early game. And you just don't beat that card as Shaman. Like, it just solos your entire early game. It's so terrifying to face down.
To me, there's a couple keys I want to look at where Thijs is taking risks on dying the following turn, but he's also giving himself draw potential in that spot. Like, if he draws Life Drinker, things can drastically change from that position. He got the word, he didn't die. So now it's up to Viper to draw damage from that spot. A Life Drinker can shut it out. And so I think he maximized like his marginal potential to climb back into that game in a very interesting way. I don't want to say interesting as like caster interesting. Like, I genuinely think he has a lot of merit to doing it the way he did it. But the reason that he's in that position and having to scrap for that is because Viper forewent that Subject 9 and pushed for damage instead. And that push for damage put Thijs in a spot where it was damned if you do and damned if you don't. He had to make a choice every single turn. And that was really a paramount spot for that game.
Yep, completely agree. But crucially, Viper has now kept pace with Orange picking up a must-win for himself. And we do have him now standing by. Viper, we can have a word with you now. Do you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
So obviously, crucial win. Obviously, stream is on a delay, so I don't know if you like knew what happened earlier with Orange before you played your game. Were you aware of the result?
Yeah, I was aware of the result.
So did that like play into your mind at all going into the matchup?
I don't know. I think at this point, like all of these things, they definitely subconsciously always play into your mind. Like you never like get this fact off your mind entirely. That's just like no player and like no 20-year-old person is at the like mind state of just shutting that out. Like we're not some meditation gurus or whatever. So I think it's like subconsciously always going to be there.
How have you been handling the pressure this leading up to this week? Because this was probably the most crucial week that you faced, and I imagine it was super tough on your end.
This week was by far the most stressful, and this was insane thinking about all of these things. And at that point, like kind of like big shout out to my team, because like we have mentor coaches and like the CEO of my team is ex-poker players. They talk to me about like what I can do in those stress situations. I like should sit down, I should start meditating, or like all these kind of like just mental health things. And I think it really helped me throughout the entire GM. And in this week was the most stressful week, and I couldn't like effectively sit down and keep my mind away from all of these things for 15 minutes or whatever, as I usually could do. So I just, especially when I tried to meditate, I realized how stressful this week is. And yeah, it was pretty insane.
I saw in the first game in the Priest Mirror, right before I think like turn 2, you like closed your eyes and took a series of like deep breaths before you even went like Light Warden in a Fire, which was like a super obvious turn in that position.
Yeah.
Like, was that part of the same like meditation preparation kind of thing?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
One of my mentor coach told me like sometimes just there's like take one deep breath, try to like I don't know, just get your focus, get your concentration on. And I feel like it's like all these small things, and then you can argue about it like being a placebo effect or whatever. But I mean, for me, it helps my mentor. It helps me staying calm and staying focused. So yeah, I think Hearthstone is a good game to do that. You can pass your turn, you can like close your eyes, take 1 or 2 deep breaths, and then your opponent probably didn't even play a card yet.
So I kind of want to zoom out and look at your season. You know, we're reflecting on a lot of things here. How do you feel like things went for you overall, like from your perspective? What do you feel were some of your biggest strengths and some of your weaknesses?
I think this format is a very interesting format. Like I said last time, where it's difficult to get insane edges because you have to like predict someone's lineup to almost the entirety. You can't just have, okay, they're gonna have these 2 decks and I'm gonna like do something with that. Well, they're gonna have 2 other decks and then they can protect something that's really good against you. So it was pretty difficult gaining like insane edges. I think I did well with the decks I played and I kind of figured out what's good. I think I threw a lot of curveballs at a lot of my opponents, and I mean that's in general what I think my strength, especially in this game, is. I'm really good at throwing curveballs at people. And my weakness, I don't know. I think my weakness was probably just when I kept losing, that I was actually like pretty annoyed at. I mean, this game I was about to. It was difficult to keep together after. This is the 3rd time I MC Tech in game 3 hit a 1 and 4 against me. So I'm like, well, not again, no. And yeah, I guess I still have to work on that, just staying focused, staying calm, and maybe I sometimes just, I don't know, maybe I sometimes just have to go back to like do the average thing, do the average decks, and you're gonna be okay. Maybe I'm sometimes actively too greedy and trying to look for edges, and then I get lost in the bigger scheme.
So one final question from me. Obviously, huge match for Swids tomorrow now against Hunter Ace. Do you watch that match? Are you watching Hearthstone at all tomorrow? Or are you taking the day off? You gonna watch?
I think I'm gonna watch this Hunter Ace match. I think that's gonna be an interesting one.
All right. Well, Viper, thank you very much for your time. It's been a lovely season for you. You had a dominant 2018, and it's been a tough couple matches at the very end at the stretch here. But I'm happy to see you pick up a win and fight the best fight that you can. So congratulations on your season here.
Thanks.